The U.S. Capitol Police Union is urging Congress to beef up security around the Capitol after an officer was killed outside of the building. To talk about this in more detail is U.S. political reporter Lisa Daftari. Lisa, a union spokesperson, says the attack combined with the violent events of January 6th have left officers reeling.
Oh, this is awful. Obviously, you know, who wants to work for the Capitol Hill Police? I mean, who wants to work for the police, period? We're having such a moment here in the United States where there is no respect for police. I mean, what little boy or girl grows up saying, I want to be like the police? I want to be spit on. I want to be shot at. I want to be totally disrespected, defunded. Even though many of the cities who defunded their police forces are now regretting it and have to beef up their support systems again. The Capitol is obviously a place that's extremely sensitive after January 6th and continuing through. We have a lot of assets there right now because of this increased risk. This car ramming that happened was what they're calling a one-off, but why was there another attack at the Capitol? The chief there says that they are in a minus 232 officer deficit from the
Wow.
2,000 police presence that they like to have, or those available. And in addition, in the next 5 years, more than 500, almost 600 of those officers are eligible to retire. So at any moment, any one of these officers can hand in their paperwork. And that's what they're afraid of, that there won't be that replenishment. There won't be the next, graduating class that wants to step up and say, we want to work there, or we want to work for the police, or we want to work in law enforcement. It's awful. I mean, I know that as our neighbors, you're watching and looking at what's happening in the United States, such a huge cultural, social shift here, and the police and how it will be viewed in the next, 10 years, I think, has been truly affected. And this is a story that really confirms that.
U.S. government facilities which are holding migrant children along the Mexican border are stretched beyond thin, Lisa. An independent monitor concluded that the overcrowding has created unsafe conditions for thousands of minors in U.S. custody today.
Yes, and the statistics are just mind-boggling. The numbers, the footage. We're not seeing too much of that. The mainstream media is remaining hushed about this. A lot of Democrat lawmakers are remaining hushed about this, but others are taking it upon themselves to take independent tours of these facilities, of the border, to look at and provide these types of statistics and numbers to us. Look, if it were not a COVID year, if it were not a pandemic year, these children are being, and adults as well, being crammed into over 70% of the occupancy of these rooms. Now, add to that we're in a pandemic year, add to that many of these individuals may be affected with COVID and spreading it to others in this close proximity. It's awful, it's inhumane, and it just goes to speak to, you may want to have a lax immigration policy, but just look at the logistics on the ground and look at the facilities that we have. It can't be this way.
Yeah, these kids have to be reunited with their parents, their folks. A once secret unit within the Guantanamo Bay Detention Center in Cuba that has fallen into disrepair, Lisa, has been closed, and the prisoners are being moved to another facility on the American base in Cuba?
Yes, so this is just a reshifting. I think a lot of people were hoping that it was just going to be shut down for good. There's about 40 total Gitmo detainees. The number is probably just a handful of those who have been moved. We don't have an exact number, but let's say several have been moved to another facility. And this one facility has been shut down for now, and they have been reshuffled, so to speak. But here, I mean, every now and then we have an article about, Guantanamo, what's going on there, how the detainees are being treated, how many are there. So we have a head count now of 40.
A big moment as the United States, Japan, and South Korea have pledged to work together in dealing with North Korea, the Asian nation which has been testing long-range missiles. Now, what will that agreement actually look like between the three countries, Lisa?
Yeah, they'll have to work out the details, but the first step is for these countries to formally, I mean, we knew that they are all, it's like the enemy of my enemy of my enemy of my enemy. So they all got together and said, look, we are going to stand firm against North Korea and its continued chest thumping in the region. Every week there's a new report about missile tests and, showing off of their new technologies there. Look, they understand that there's a new sheriff in town, and that we're talking about the White House in Washington, D.C. So it's no surprise that North Korea, like many other rogue nations, are testing the limits of the White House and President Biden. And it's nice to see others come together. And this was under the watch of Jake Sullivan, our national security head, where these countries got together and said, we're behind you, and let's work out some kind of deal where we stand firm against North Korea and curb their growth in the region.
The foreign minister of Jordan says an alleged plot by Jordan's former crown prince to undermine the government was foiled. Lisa, it allegedly involved a plan to destabilize the country, but to what end?
Right, exactly right. I mean, this was a crazy story. When I saw this, it's like a movie. Jordan, as you may know, is a quite a stable country within the Middle East. It has a pretty stable past, present, and future. It has a king and queen that are very Americanized. They have a great relationship with the United States as well as Israel in the region. And we're talking about the heads of state here. So I mean, that's pretty stable considering the Middle East and the actors out there. Now, no one would have believed that this would have happened within the royal family. This is the former crown prince that is being accused of trying to work together with some of his cronies to destabilize the government. And so his phone calls and some of the communication was intercepted, and now he is under house arrest with no communications and no ability to tell his side of the story. But I mean, we're staying tuned for more details because this is very juicy, and we're trying to see who he was in touch with. Also, one of the other interesting details is that they believe foreign nations were involved. But who would want to destabilize Jordan? Who would want to take down the current king and queen? And we'll have to see as this unfolds. But they were quite certain that they did foil an actual plot, and now he is under house arrest.
It does sound like a Hollywood script, absolutely here. Lisa, desperate refugees are fleeing Myanmar to Thailand and India to escape the crisis since the military coup. Thousands are seeking safety. But both authorities in the two countries have tried to block new arrivals, fearing that a steady flow may become a flood of migrants if unrest in Myanmar continues.
Yes, and isn't that how it always happens, right? You know, my cousin went over, now they found a safe haven, I'm going to go over, and that's how it begins. The trickle becomes the flood. And it's no surprise. These individuals are hoping for better days. They're hoping for a stable life. And in Myanmar, it doesn't look like they're going to get there anytime soon. The military is not letting up, and doesn't look like we're going to get life back to normal there anytime soon. And as you stated, these neighboring countries have tried to stop these refugees from coming in. They've tried to shut their doors, but it's obviously impossible. So they will have to try to at least deter some individuals from going over, perhaps work together with the military in Myanmar to work something out so people can just stay put, and we don't have another refugee crisis in another part of the world.
Myanmar anti-coup protesters launched an Easter egg strike during the holidays. Now, what did that look like?
Oh my goodness, what beautiful pictures came out of something that is, you know, pretty sad, but individuals try to make the most of it. Instead of celebrating Easter the way they usually do with a parade and showing their Easter eggs, they use that opportunity to make a political statement, writing on their eggs political protest slogans, and showing them in this parade that they had. Beautiful pictures. We're going to actually put them up on the Foreign Desk Instagram shortly. The pictures are going up soon. But it's so nice to see them use these colors of Easter and this time of holiday, springtime, renewal, rebirth, hope, and to create some optimism for the people, and to present their political protest in a way that it comes together, it brings everyone together. So those pictures were just absolutely beautiful.
Need something to lift people's spirits, absolutely. The term COVID-19 passports has come up here in Canada, and it's also come up in the UK. Lisa, Britain is apparently planning to test measures including coronavirus status certifications to see if they will allow people to safely return to mass gatherings at sports arenas, nightclubs, and concerts.
Hal, this is so troublesome. I know that there is obviously such a debate around this topic in every part of the world. I know in Europe, and as you stated, in Canada, in the United States, and the UK, where they're actually going to implement it for a while. Here in the United States, the tagline that I'm seeing in many places, including all over Twitter, is "My COVID passport is the Constitution," where many believe that this is an overreach of the government to say that you need to be vaccinated. You know, it is an infringement on our civil liberties, and it's also a pandemic. You know, you have to look at both sides and say the science is there. We want people to be safe, and you can't really control people and how they socially, if they're socially distant, if they wear their masks, if they wash their hands, if they come out with a cold. Um, it's difficult. It's difficult to say, but I think a lot of people are going to fight this. I know the governor in Florida, who has become such an icon for civil liberties and freedoms during this time, and his state has remained open and free and safe from COVID for the most part. You know, he has signed a bill saying, well, I'm not going to allow this. I'm not going to allow this COVID passport thing to go through. And I think a lot of other people will be fighting it as well. I know there have been protests in the UK, all over Europe, that are fighting this. And on the other hand, government officials want us to be safe. If you're going to a concert, you want to make sure everyone, you know, I know here in Los Angeles, for example, I know people have had weddings where they've required people to show up with a proof of a negative COVID test, for example. I mean,
Wow.
it's I don't know how we're going to get through this, but
But
we
you do
will
see
get through
both sides of it, right? Like you said, you want people to be safe, but at the same time, you have constitutional rights here being infringed upon.
Right. And you know what, Hal? I think the constitutional rights being infringed upon for me is much more important. And I want to believe that people will be safe and people will be responsible. But I understand the other side of the argument as well. But you know, it's a slippery slope. This entire COVID this whole process has been a slippery slope on our liberties, on our freedoms, to say that you must wear a mask, to say that you must do this and you must do that, the schools being closed, the children not having, you know, their right to education. There are so many different conversations to be had. There's so many challenges to our constitution and to, you know, just the basic rights that humans have regardless of what country they live in. So I think, you know, this will be up for debate, but we just hope we can be rid of this pandemic and get out of this era as soon as possible.
And we can't forget about all of the thousands of business owners who've lost their livelihood. In Canada alone, 10,000 restaurants have shut down, Lisa. Incredibly sad. Now, here's an interesting story coming out of the Jerusalem Post, which said that the last known Jew is leaving Afghanistan. The man says the U.S. military's promise to leave the country will leave a vacuum to be filled with radical groups, including the Taliban.
What a story, right? I mean, my reaction to the story was I didn't know there were any Jews left in Afghanistan, but we say that about every part of the Middle East where there used to be thriving communities of Jews within like the tens of thousands, and now obviously dwindling numbers of Jews. I know there's still communities in Iran, for example, in Morocco, and other parts of the Middle East. But this last Jew leaving Afghanistan, I'm sure it's very upsetting for those who have that background. They are Afghani Jews. This is the end of their chapter, the end of their legacy as Afghanis living as Jews in the Middle East. But as you said correctly, as these minorities leave, whether they're Christian, Syrian, Baha'i, Jews, it does create the vacuum. It does create that absence of other that will be filled by extremism, even with moderates, with the immigration in like Syria or Iran, with countries where the more moderate people, the more educated people are leaving the country. That creates a vacuum as well, where the more jihadists, the more extremists can come in and fill that. So this is a one of the side effects of the Middle East's changing population shifts. But on the bright side, we also have the Abraham Accords, and we have, you know, a lot more of that modernity coming to the Middle East. And I'm sure countries like Afghanistan that are left in the dark will soon join up and say, we want what they have. We want the technology, we want the iPads, we want the iPhones, we want an education, and we want to be right there with all of those modern Middle Eastern countries. And hopefully the rest of the Middle East will catch up as well.
Absolutely. Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Thank you, Lisa.
My pleasure.